While 53 people, including 45 children, died of a viral fever in Firozabad in Uttar Pradesh. 186 people are still in hospital and a large number of those affected are children. The Firozabad administration has ordered the closure of schools for classes 1 to 8 as a precautionary measure. The Firozabad DM has said that a team of the World Health Organization has confirmed that the disease affecting children in western Uttar Pradesh is a type of dengue called a DHF or a dengue hemorrhagic fever, which is a very severe form of dengue. Does that bring us any closer to solving this fever that is claiming lives in western Uttar Pradesh? Well, we'll ask a panel of experts. Meanwhile, in the latest developments, 14 people have died in Uttar Pradesh's Mathura in the last 15 days. Above more than 60 deaths in western Uttar Pradesh have taken place due to this fever. And like I said at the very outset, the worrying development is that a large number of these deaths are those of children. We'll be joined by a panel of experts, but let's first listen in to the reactions coming in.
जो मुझे WHO की टीम ने बताया है, उनका कहना यह है कि ये डेंगू हेमोरेजिक डेंगू है और बहुत खतरनाक टाइप का डेंगू है और इसमें बच्चों की प्लेटलेट्स एकदम से अचानक से गिरती हैं और उनको ब्लीडिंग होती है, गम्स में ब्लीडिंग, इवन गम्स में भी ब्लीडिंग हो रही है। तो ये थोड़ा डिफरेंट टाइप का डेंगू है, लेकिन इसको रोकने के लिए यही है कि जन जन को जागरूक हम लोगों को करना है। उसी के लिए हम लोग आज पूरी टीम के साथ यहाँ पे हैं। कुछ मोहल्लों में मैंने सुबह, कुछ मोहल्लों में अभी हम लोगों ने इस चीज़ को शुरू किया है कि लोग खुद आगे बढ़ के अपने घर की गंदगी दूर करें, अपने घर में जो पानी जमा है, जहाँ से मच्छर पैदा हो रहे हैं, उसको दूर करें।
हमारे साथ मथुरा की चीफ मेडिकल ऑफिसर रचना गुप्ता जी हैं। मैम, अभी क्या सिचुएशन है मथुरा में? अभी भी लोग कह रहे हैं 50-60 लोग अभी भी बुखार से ग्रसित हैं, कुछ गांव में ज़्यादा प्रकोप है।
हाँ, मथुरा में फरा ब्लॉक में बुखार से कुछ बच्चों की मृत्यु हुई थी और उसके बाद हमने तुरंत गांव में ही हमने चिकित्सा इकाई अपनी रखी और गांव में ही उपचार सुनिश्चित किया सभी बच्चों का। और गांव में ही हमने एक अस्थायी चिकित्सालय बनाया और वहां से 5 किलोमीटर दूर एक सामुदायिक स्वास्थ्य केंद्र फरा है, वहाँ भी हमने बच्चों का बराबर इलाज किया और अभी भी इस समय वहाँ पर 6-7 बच्चे भर्ती हैं और सबकी हालत ठीक है और सबकी हमने बराबर पूरी व्यवस्था की और जांच कराई और इलाज बराबर चल रहा है सबका।
मैम, अभी भी कितने लोगों को वहाँ पर बुखार है?
हाँ, इस समय हम जो देखा है हमने बराबर हमारे यहाँ व्यवस्था चल रही है। बुखार के केस अभी इस समय पूरे गांव की आबादी 3500 है और इसमें करीब 40-50 रोगी बुखार के हैं जिनका इलाज चल रहा है।
मैम, ये क्या है? बुखार किस चीज़ से आ रहा है? कोविड ये है नहीं, वो जो आप लोगों की फाइंडिंग्स में है, क्या है ये बुखार?
इसमें कुछ लोगों को डेंगू का एलिसा टेस्ट पॉजिटिव आया है और कुछ लोगों में स्क्रब टाइफस और लेप्टोस्पायरोसिस के वो उसमें जांच में आया है।
मैम, अभी और सैंपल्स क्या भेजे गए हैं? पानी की सारी वेक्टर बॉर्न डिजीजेस हैं?
हाँ, सैंपल तो बराबर जा रहे हैं और बराबर इलाज जारी है।
मैम, आगे क्या और कड़े कदम उठा रहे हैं जिससे ये आगे ना स्प्रेड हो इसको लेकर के?
हाँ, बराबर गांव में भी हमारा मच्छर रोधी कार्रवाई जारी है और सभी का उपचार सुनिश्चित किया जा रहा है।
सभी का उपचार तो आपने वहीं हॉस्पिटल गांव में बना दिए हैं।
All right, joining us on the broadcast, Dr. Nihar Parekh, pediatrician and director, Cheers Childcare. We also have Dr. Krishan Chugh, principal director in HOD Pediatrics, joining us from Fortis, Gurugram. Thank you both very much for being with us. Dr. Chugh, if I can begin by asking you about this viral fever that the WHO representatives have now said is a type of a severe form of dengue. Why are more children being affected? What are the symptoms? What do we need to know about this at the moment?
Well, as you all know, dengue fever is a fever which is caused by mosquito bites, Aedes mosquito, which if we take precautions and there are no mosquitoes at our home and home environment, at the school environment, work environment, this will not occur. The virus travels via the mosquito from one patient to the other. Now, when the mosquito bites, the virus enters the bite recipient's blood. From there, it multiplies in the body, and once a large number of them have been have reached, then this becomes dangerous. It causes fever initially. Fever can be really, really high. From the beginning, day one, it can touch 103, 104. Of course, it can be starting from 100 and taking you to 100, 203 in a day or two or even 3. But this is one fever which can come suddenly in a high fever form.
So you're saying then, in terms of the symptoms that we need to watch out for, fever is the most important symptoms. Are there any other symptoms?
Fever, a lot of body aches, headaches, severe headache, inability to swallow, inability to take anything orally by small children, tummy ache, and this is the initial phase. When the hemorrhagic stage has not reached, at this stage itself we can recognize it. In fact, on day one of fever, there are tests available which will give us a definite diagnosis that this is dengue fever. Right. It's called the N1 test. Right. And then on 4th and 5th day or maybe 6th, 7th day, the fever starts coming somewhat down, but that is the dangerous phase. That is where the hemorrhages start occurring. That is where the platelets suddenly drop. And this is the stage, or slightly before that, it is the hemoglobin of the blood which is rising. So a rising hemoglobin is a danger sign.
So rising hemoglobin and a whole host of other symptoms, fever, headache, upset stomach, severe body ache are some of the symptoms that people need to be watchful about. Dr. Parekh, if I can bring you into the conversation, why is it that a majority of those being affected by this viral fever, now we know apparently linked to a very severe form of dengue, why is it that children are the worst hit?
I don't think in particular the reason is that children are more affected than adults. I think a lot of adults are also affected. But in children, dengue the problem is it behaves like a regular virus. So 3 to 4 days of the fever go by. Parents are happy that nothing is wrong. And like Dr. Jog said, it's on the 4th or 5th day after the fever goes is when they suddenly collapse. And this is what is the antibody response to the initial virus that caused the 3 to 4 days of fever. The body responds in a very severe fashion, drops the platelets, drops the counts, fluid starts oozing out of the bloodstream, and then it causes what we call as a fluid loss in the third space, which puts the entire body into shock. And then it starts involving multiple organs, like the heart, the kidney, the liver, and that's when children just crash and everyone's running to the hospital with a listless child, thinking that nothing happened, the child recovered in 3 to 4 days and suddenly they crash. So it's the sudden crash which is making everyone panic. 3 to 4 days of the fever go by, everyone is calm, and on the 6th or 7th day, the child drops, and that's the problem.
Okay. Why is this at the moment, Dr. Parekh, according to you, localized to 2 areas, and thank God it is, but the majority of these cases are being reported from Firozabad and Mathura. Why do you think that's the case? Why do you think we are seeing the spread in certain areas only? And I mean, thank God it's restricted to certain areas, but why is it so?
I wouldn't completely agree with you that it's restricted in those areas. Technically, after these rains which have gone by over the last 15-20 days, there's a lot of pooling of water everywhere across different villages, in fields, especially in hutments and slum-like establishments, which are not cleaned and cleared away. So as the water puddles around them, the mosquitoes brood and breed, and these mosquitoes are infected by the flavivirus, which is the dengue virus, and then they bite these people. Their mosquito repellents, their ability to prevent bites is much lesser than the urban areas. These hygiene levels are much lesser than the urban areas. The ability to clear those infected pools of water is much less. And hence we've seen an outbreak in villages more, which are slightly little unhygienic than the urban places.
So keeping your surroundings hygienic, no stagnant water, trying to keep mosquitoes at bay really is also in a certain sense a list of precautions that you've listed out against it. But Dr. Chog, of course the most apparent question that comes to mind when you hear of so many people dying in such a short span of time due to a viral fever is any linkage with coronavirus. So is there any known linkage with COVID? Can COVID make this worse, or is this just a very separate kind of a disease?
There is no such evidence that it has any relation with COVID directly.
Okay.
Nor is it there any evidence that those who have suffered from COVID in the past, let's say past 1 year, past few months, that if they acquire dengue fever now that they would suffer more. There is no such evidence. And this dengue fever is absolutely different in its presentation from COVID. COVID in children generally does not cause very high fever.
Okay.
High fever lasting for 4, 5, 6 days without any respiratory symptoms tells us that this is not going to be COVID.
All right.
As it is, COVID is generally quite low across the country except in few states.
Okay. Dr. Parekh, very last question to you. In the midst of the pandemic, right now the first reaction is whenever anybody gets a fever, the reaction is that, you should go ahead and get a COVID test done. Would you recommend, therefore, given the fact that, dengue is very typical to this season, that people should also perhaps be getting themselves checked for dengue?
I think this year, last month and a half, we've seen a dramatic increase in the number of dengue fever, especially in children.
Okay.
And like Dr. Joke said, we've not seen that many COVID cases in children over the last 1.5 months.
Right.
So by the third day, normally we do expect the parents to stay calm, treat fevers for 72 hours. But in epidemics like dengue fever and COVID, our time limit has dropped down to 48 hours.
Okay.
So the minute there is unexplained fever for more than 48 hours, no parent should hesitate in getting basic blood work done. The reports are simply available. They're standardized kits. They can be read anywhere, anyhow. The chances of human error is very less. So I think please proactively get your child tested if the fever lasts more than 48 hours.
Okay. So I think two important takeaways. One is if the fever lasts more than 48 hours, and like Dr. Chugh said, that the one slight differentiating factor from COVID is also extremely high fever, coupled with, of course, body ache and a whole host of other symptoms. It's very important, the information that you both have shared with us on the broadcast this evening. Thanks very much for joining us on NDTV.